Hello, I'd like to invite anyone who hasn't already done so before I welcome our guests to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Magnamind Academy, where we upload recorded sessions of these talks and stream them live. Please also comment any questions on the YouTube comment section or just let us know what you think about today's talk. All right, before we get into the main workshop, I'd like to introduce the Magnamind Academy's co-founder, Murat Day, who's also the CEO for SmartLens and has worked out with Stanford Research. He'll be talking about the different programs Magnamind has to offer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's SQL program. It's going to be given by Dane Miller, one of our amazing faculty members. So I will just briefly talk about what Magnamind is doing and just give some brief information about our programs. So I'm happy to say that we have organized over 80 programs throughout last year. And we have given lectures, workshops, meetups. And since the COVID started, that in-house shelters started, we started our all programs online. And by this way, we increased the number of events we organize. We doubled our programs. We hope that people just benefit from our free events during that time. And we are also launching several new programs, including new workshops. And we are starting new talks, and we are starting new AI talks. And we have an AI health luncheon talk series starting soon. Hope you guys all can attend. And I'm just gonna briefly talk about our 101 bootcamp, mentorship bootcamp. That is, we are taking next batch next month. And so in this one, we have very elaborated, short-term, immense, intense program. I just want to share my screen to show that some details in there. So what we have in our mentorship program, we are working on several projects during 7 weeks and assigning 3 to 5 mentors to each student. And we have mentors and insight programs from top tech companies from Silicon Valley. We bring in those mentors. We are having practice interviews during that 7 weeks, and our goal is to try to prepare everyone in like project-wise, also the knowledge base. We want to improve everyone and get ready for the interviews. And we have career coaching that during that time, we just try to see what is missing, what is lacking. We want to tailor our program based on each individual. And we give also resume support. And during that time, if all the progress goes well with the students, we're also arranging internship with the companies that several of our projects are based on. So the students may move from projects to this internship position with some of these companies. So our application for the next batch started, and we have deadline in the first week of June, but as the earlier application will be better. So we have like a first come, first serve kind of the application. If we fill the next batch, we are just gonna expect to open another batch to fill to go through your application. So as soon as you have, if you make decision, to apply for our mentorship program. I hope you enjoyed today's program and our following program. And I'd like to also thank Dane for preparing us today's workshop. Thank you.
All right, awesome, great. Thank you, Murat, for that word. Now I'd like to welcome Dane Miller, who will be presenting the SQL workshop today at Magnamind. We're trying to find speakers who can deliver workshops like these that go along with our data science education programs, just give a new information and current perspectives to really accompany that. Tonight's workshop will cover all the basics that you need for SQL and Postgres, essential information for anyone trying to get into open source relational database management. Miller's career, however, is a great example that data science can really take you anywhere. He started out in a data analysis and visualization position, working with different research organizations in paleontology, doing anything from managing fossil data to creating maps using KML files and Google Earth. He's also been heavily involved in education and the data science roles behind that, which led to many positions within the Children's Health Council for Sand Hill School, as well as other education positions. And most recently, he's taken on a role with Les Schwab Tires, which demands several data science skills, some of which will be on display tonight. We at Magnamind are extremely excited to host him. We would like to ask you now to give your full attention to Dane Miller.
Thank you, Thomas, for the thank you, Thomas and Marat, for the introductions. I really appreciate all those kind words, and thank you everyone for joining. Today's talk is going to just cover a lot of kind of the basics, getting into working with PostgreSQL. If you haven't downloaded it and those kind of things, don't worry about it. I'm going to provide all the slides for Magnamind, and then they can send it out to you folks afterwards. So if you have questions of some of that kind of stuff, we can address that as it goes. But feel free to put any questions into the message box. I'll try my best to answer everything that you guys address. So let me start here by sharing my screen. And all panelists. All right, can everyone see the screen so far? I think so. All right, so just a little bit of, I'm going to give a little bit of background about just some of, a little bit of my background, why Postgres and the architecture is useful. And then we're going to go into sort of how to set it up, and then doing some activities with Postgres, SQL, using a database that we can connect to, and writing some queries, and then how to connect it with Python. So yeah, so as Thomas and Marat mentioned, just a little bit of my background. I worked in paleontology, did some amazing projects that kind of got me into teaching, working with students with learning differences in Palo Alto. And then those interests in teaching and data kind of melded it all together into a career of data science, which I'm now in Bend, Oregon, so working with Les Schwab Tires. Just a brief overview of kind of the open source databases that are out there. There's a lot of different kinds of databases for open source, and it really depends on maybe what you're looking for, what are the needs of your company or the projects that you're going after. So there's a lot of different things that are out there. The most popular ones are MySQL, MariaDB, SQLite, but there's a variety of different ones that are out here. So they do different kinds of things. Let's see. Okay, so here's just a little breakdown on some of the differences between these databases. Again, we're just focusing on today for Postgres, but just to keep in mind that there's a lot of different kinds of databases that do different things for managing data within your enterprise or whatever the needs are. So the reason that Postgres is really interesting is because it's a relational database, and it could be used with things like Python easily. So, so here are just some things. So it uses a client-server model, the client process and the program on the front end. The PSQL is the command line. So you can create databases, drop them, create users, server process backend, managing databases, process manager, sort of forking and terminating processes, querying processor, and then there's a lot of utilities and storage within this process. So here is a link that I did provide within the comment section earlier. So if I click on this, it would SQL database download. And so if you're looking at this and if you've already gone through here, that's great. If you haven't, don't sweat it. You can always add, I can provide this material with you. So there's a lot of different versions, but typically you want to keep, the most current. So if you're using a Mac, download the latest version, or I'm using a Windows, so I download the 2012 or the 12.2, sorry. So if you have gotten into the download part so far, so it'll show you different kind of aspects of, if you want to, include the stack builder, which is a whole bunch of different things that, some of it is different types of Microsoft of things that are just add-ons. You don't really need this to do Postgres. It's just additional stuff. I would suggest leaving this unchecked. It's just so you don't have all this extra things that are being downloaded. So once you have Postgres downloaded, I'm just gonna, all you really have to do is just go to your command line and then just type in pg admin, and it should pop up right here. You just click on it and we'll go straight to, this is what the interface looks like for our Postgres. So it's Postgres. So you have a lot of different things that are kind of covered in here. You have kind of like, you can configure it with your, different tools in here. You can add a new server. There's a lot of great documentation and other community support within the Postgres is great tools. So what we're going to do today, it's going a little slow here, but let me get this back up here. So I'm going to show you, I'm just going to go through it just a little bit. We're going to create a new server. So if you have already done that, we're going to create a new server and connect to a database. So I'm going to minimize this for a second. Let's see, how do I? Okay, minimize this. So our server that we're going to use is this one called, this one that I created, it's called RNA. I'm going to provide the information for you to link it to. So here we go. And present. Okay, so once we have connected to a kind of a new, or opening up a new server, I'm going to walk you through this. We're going to connect to this database, and this database happens to be a database, which is really interesting with, the COVID-19. It's an RNA-based virus. And so we're going to connect to this. So in order to do that, we would come up to our server, right click on it, create, and you go to server, and you can name this whatever you want. So if you wanted to name it, that's totally fine, workshop, May 11. But the really important part is what we're going to add into this host area. So here, this is where we want to add in this information. So let's see if I can, I will send this to the, let's see, sorry about that. I'm just trying to find the, let's see. All right, well, I'll send it over in just 1 second. So, so what we're going to do, we're going to add in the different information here. So if it was this first part, we're going to add the host in. And the name. The username is reader. And so once we have this connected, it's a open source database. We can connect here, or it will say May 11th workshop. That's our new database that we just connected. And once we get to this point where we'll open it up, we can have databases. We're going to click on this here. This is the database that was created that we're logging onto. And now we're going down into where it says schema. And schema, there's the public, and this is the RNA tables that are inside this. So we're going to click on that, come down to where it says tables. And then all of these, there's tons of available tables that we can access, all through through a variety of different stuff here. So if we went through one, let's just say protein, I can go to this view and edit data. So I can just click on the first 100 rows just to see what kind of data this looks like. And hopefully this will, okay, good. So what's really nice about this GUI version of Postgres is that you can just go and select on something, kind of look at your, to see what kinds of columns you have, what kinds of data that's in here. And we can go down through a variety of different things. I'm going to close this little part here. So if we were going to open up something to run a query, we want to use this little lightning bolt that's up here, a query. So this is the query tool. And it just gives us a little window that we can write some different things inside here. So I have a couple of scripts that are open up. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to try to, if I can get this out of the way, share this whole document with, copy a link. And let's see, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to try to see if I can send it over. Answer, just minutes, whoops. Not sure if all right. Apologize about the answering and okay. I'll try to get this over to you. I apologize with I'm still learning a little bit of the Zoom stuff here. All right, so once we're inside, opening up the Postgres, and when we're in the editor here, I'm going to go through some different parts that just to show you how to run some of the queries. Imagine a lot of people are probably familiar with SQL, just running some basic stuff, but we're going to run some basic things and then run some things that are a little more advanced. But just to begin, so we have, select count. So count is, we're trying to count all the different columns, how many attributes are in there. So that's what the star is for everything. From is from the specific table that we're drawing from, and this is our from our schema that's up here. So we can specify if we have a number of different schemas, you're going to have a different name that's going to here before we get there. Where is going to tell us where in the table that we want to highlight. And here we're locating this particular column at this particular type of attribute. So we can run it. Whoops. Did I make this? All right. Some of these you get a little problems with, I apologize. But so if we run this, if you want to just, you can always double check where, something comes from, just to see if is written correctly or not. We can always just double check the data. It's taking a little while to run here. While this runs, I'm going to go back to the screen and just go through a couple of the things here. So understanding the script, so we could start with, so this part that's highlighted here is the table, and we have our database. Here we're selecting a particular variable from this column. So let's see if I can answer a question raised. Trying to, I will see if I can come back. And let's see, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to run through all the slides and then share it, and then we can go through some of the stuff together. Maybe that will help a little bit more. So, again, we can select something, a count of how many things that are in there, limit it to maybe a certain number of rows that we want. So 100, we can go 1,000. We can do them all by just leaving this out. This next part down here, if it's distinct, this is really going to focus on that unique aspect of this ID. So if there's multiple IDs of this, single one, and each one of these that are listed afterwards are column names. So we can list, if there's 50 column names, we can 3 or 4, we can list all of them by including just a star. And then we can get through some things such as, locating where different parts of the data are by putting in conditions. We have region start, and so these are parts of regions within the RNA that have to do with, I believe, sequencing. So if this starts this endpoint, and then we can group by that ID of this particular protein and order it by itself too. So this would give us a result based on how we have limited it to those particular IDs. So basics with SQL. So these are kind of some of the main types of commands that you use. So select, specify information you want to pull from your tables. The from is always going to be used to which table that you're specifying that you're pulling that data from. Where kind of tells you where in the records that you're pulling certain information. If you're, for instance, you're saying like where, in a particular date that is 1999, you could put in that field of 1999 to highlight a chunk of data instead of looking at all of it. You can order by, and group by. And then having is really it helps with aggregating results. So if you're using, the min or max, these kind of things, we need to use having to aggregate those results down. So here are just kind of a layout of how you do it. You might, if you're counting all the variables, we're using a variable 1, again, from the database name. Here we have the where clause. We're going to pull from a variable, maybe 2. And here's our and then we can group by. Whoops, sorry, it looked like my internet was dropping off here. Sorry about that. I've had some internet issues here today. Group by variable 1, and then order by it as well. So the group before order by, and you kind of, I figured it out kind of the hard way of, when you're doing this kind of stuff every day, you start to pick it up faster and faster. Working at Les Schwab, we use SQL, we use SQL, but it's Snowflake SQL. So it's, big database, and it's all on the cloud. And so you're really going through a lot of different aspects of the database, and you're learning a vast amount every day. And these are getting into a little bit of the aggregate functions to go through here. I'm going to, so we could use either an average, min, and there are some other. Sorry about that. I think my internet dropped off. Let me. Hold on one second. I'm going to share this whole presentation so everyone can follow along. Okay, so I shared the presentation here. I apologize that my internet sometimes goes in and out. I don't know why it's not the best, but let's see. Maybe I'll take a minute to answer some questions before we can go forward. Let's see how we're here. So when it's pack Stack Builder 4.2, I'm gonna ask the applications, what do I install? what do you recommend? And so back earlier when we were looking at those slides, I would say unclick the stack builder. If you want to use it, that's totally fine. It's not necessarily something that's really going to be useful for this. What is the difference between and an object relational database? That's a really good question. It really comes down to kind of how the tables are set up. And so so the object relational databases are easier to connect with object-oriented programs such as Python. I'm not an expert in all the different kinds of SQL, but that's the short answer is what that's what we'd say. That's what I'm going to say. You keep cutting out, improve the internet quality. Yeah, I'm trying to do my best on that. I apologize. Are we covering Postgres tonight? Yes. So it's Postgres and some scripting. So just let me know, does everyone get the link attached? Okay, I'm going to go back to open up the screen here. Oops, I'm going to close this. Okay, so we're going to move a little bit forward. So these are, average, sum, max. These are all different kinds of aggregates. So we can aggregate the data, something more interesting or find something that you're looking for in the, when you're doing the exploration. So these are used quite a bit through here. Show you a little bit about the having and order by. So I'm hoping, let's see. Oops, I was disconnected because I've fell off the internet here. But if we, so I ran this little script here that I attached onto the slides that I sent you guys. As we're trying to get the max of the average length, and then we can rename this as to something, whatever we want to name it. But I named it as max average length, and then we're going to include the display name. So from this, we have all the way down here. Where is this? RNC database right over here is where we're drawing all this data from. So in here, we can include some different things such as, the number of sequences. We can put a condition in here of how many we want to look at above this or below that, grouping it by the display name, and then having of over 500. So we're trying to find this max length, the maximum, but we're looking at all the values over 500 and then ordering by this max length in it. So here we could sort of try to find out all these display names, the max length of these. This might be useful for researchers looking at different sequence lengths, and then they can find those pretty very easily with that way. So let's go back a little bit. An order by is really useful for finding information pretty quick. We can, come back and search that and stuff. So joining tables, this is another very useful thing that you're going to be doing within SQL. A lot of databases, if you're working at any size of company, you're going to be, putting multiple tables together. It's just a very common thing. So I'm going to show you it. So these are two tables that I have merged together. And so in this, we're going to, oops, I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to try to get to your questions in just a second, okay? So here we have selected all these different column names. And so you could see that some of this has a little abbreviation before. The blue is the column name, and to the left of that is the table name. And so joining multiple tables, you need to have a way for SQL to understand, to distinguish between these tables. And that is kind of it could be the full name, or you can make an abbreviation for that name. So what we're doing here is we're pulling this RNC database. It's coming from here. It has all these particular columns attached to it. And then we're going to interjoin it to this RNC genome mapping, which these following columns are attached to. And so you do that from this particular column on the top with the ID. This is what we're to an ID of that's found within that RNC genome mapping. And both of those will match up on those particular numbers that are there. Then we can group by, so the number here, 1, it signifies as ID. I could have written ID as 1 here. 6 would come all the way down to the assembly ID, and 7 is chromosome. So we're grouping it by those 3, and then we're ordering it by the ID. And so when you're finished with this, you have kind of your ID, your full description of where, what kind of, I guess these are organisms, the length of that, the min, and then some other information within here. So, and then you can include as much as you want or as little as you want within these. And so I'm going to see if I can address some questions. Please keep coming out. Okay. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to come back over here. And so if we want to, a lot of times, you're presented with, if you're working in industry or whatever the case might be, if you're in data science, you're going to be, asked questions of how do you answer a question. So, so for instance, in this RNA table, how many unique sequences are within this column? So how would we do that? We could first look at this. Just gonna highlight this right here. So if we went down to select star, I'd just like to see what kind of information is in here first. And waiting for it to run. And it's going pretty slow. So what you're going to do for this particular problem here, so many unique sequences within here. So you're going to want to use the distinct, the distinct that we can help find. Yeah, the internet is cutting in and out. I really apologize about that. We can find the distinct amount of, the unique ones within those. So if we want to find the average, the next one down here, if we want to find the average length of the RNA sequence within a column, we can use one of those aggregate functions, probably the average, to try to find out what those were. And we did have that earlier in one of those scripts. I would encourage you to, if you haven't, let's say, I would encourage you to go through some of these, just go through any kind of data when you're going through this kind of stuff. You can also go through, really highlight different parts. So here's a different table, which is the release stats table, to trying to find a particular start time. So finding all the dates within 2014. So for here, you would want to use something as the where clause to, if it's, where and whatever that column name is. And, you could go with the date. And then it could be that particular year. So this could go right down to that particular time frame that you're really looking at. So above, we combined a couple different tables together. I'm just going to show you this is a overview of a different, just different kind of problems. So if you're getting into more advanced querying, and most likely, if you're getting into the data science field, you'll probably see something similar to this, or getting down this route. But we have multiple different columns here from several different tables. So we're taking each one of these that are on the left here is from a different table. Is a column name, and we have all these different ones down here, and then they're also adding a bunch of tables together, or columns together, to make a new column named allowances. So in order to do this just shows you how you could put a lot of different information together, join all these tables. Then we have the different little, we can employee, we can go back up and find where employee ID, it needs to attach to attendance ID, which is going to be, and some of this information that's being pulled from above. So each one of these has to be tied to a certain aspect from above. And then and then it gets into group by and order by, and then all the data is kind of coalesced together. So that's a little bit more advanced. I want to see if I can ask any questions before I can move forward. Apologize, I'm not the best at doing this, but Let's see, keep cutting out, coming. All right. See if I can get on here for just 1 second. Stop the share. I'm going to reshare the presentation. I'll make sure you guys have that. Oops. Yeah, link. Okay. Found it on YouTube channel. Can you clarify where the deck was shared? Okay, so I just shared the, whoops, I think it's just to all panelists. Let's see. So I just shared all of the slides on the Zoom chat. So please let me know if you've gotten those. You can just, just thumbs up or anything like that would help. Trying to go through here to see. I'm going to go through a couple more slides of just how you can add, SQL or to Python, and then we'll kind of just kind of wrap it up. If you guys have further questions, I'm happy to help. And yeah, I'm just feel free to use me as a resource if you guys are looking at starting at this stuff. It does take a while to get used to using SQL, and I still have a fair amount to learn too. So so one of the interesting things, if you want to upload your own data into Postgres, you can do that by going to where it's down to create a table, and then you would right click on that table, and you can name it something, whatever you want, and then import a CSV file or something else, or you could copy in the you want to use. Here I've provided a link to well, this is from, if you have it saved onto your desktop, but so below the link is to the unemployment for the last 5 years. And what's really interesting, if you look at this, and you can also look at the data, you can download it here. So it's going back to 1950, to the 80s, and then here we are in the 2000, in April 2020, and so it's a huge jump. And so it's a pretty simple database. It's just kind of looking at the number of percentage by year, and so you could try to upload that into the SQL. Let's see. So here we are at the PostgreSQL to Python. So we can connect with, you could do this right into Jupyter Notebooks or whichever kind of version you're using your Python. And you're just going to install this right here. This will provide kind of a link to your database. And so if your database has, for instance, the one that we're using with the RNA, it has those kind of, the password and the host name, it'll ask you once you get on there to prompt to enter in that information. So, and then lastly, these aren't necessarily my visualizations, but as you're getting into data science and I'm assuming most of you already have started to get into it. There's a lot of different ways you can visualize data and data that you can pull from these databases. So in these ways of how we can look at different like cladograms and heat maps, to looking at distributions, to something that's more, this is actually it's a bokeh that you can actually toggle actual specific data points that are in here, and mapping. And so these are just a few things, but it is a pretty powerful set of tools here. I think I went over one part that I want to show you. Where was it? Right here. Okay. So the PSQL, this is, so if you go into, from your command line, you can actually get into Postgres from here. So PSQL is just an abbreviation for PostgreSQL. So if we wanted to get into our particular database that we named here, let's see, I think this actually it's the other one here. Excuse me. We can look at a list of all these things. So \L just shows you the list of all the databases that we've named here. So these are certain things that I've named. It's a little different when you're trying to log into a credentialed database like the one that we're using. But so for instance, if we wanted to use one that I have in here, whoops, can't even spell today. We can to this particular, so we can go through the command line to actually look at, the same kind of interface as the database as in this GUI version of the pgadmin 4. So, which probably has a little bit more controls on certain things. It might not be as pretty to look at and stuff, but still do a lot of the same. Sorry? Yep.
We're not able to see your screen right now.
No, you can't see it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I must have. And so what I'll just rehash just a little bit. So what I did was I went down to, if you're using a Windows, just type into the search here. PSQL is it's just the command line for Postgres. And then if we did a \L, and it will show us a list of all the databases that we have created. So these are ones that we've created. And then, so if you're really, if you're comfortable with using command line, you can do a lot of different things in here to access different databases. That probably is a little bit faster if you wanted to. Whoops. Than if you're doing it within the other way. So here we can get into, if we wanted to look at what was in this particular table. Oops. And then we can go back down through. So it's kind of interesting. I'll show you, let's see, where is the, what do you select star? So here we can access just a certain amount of the if I wanted to do all the databasing work within this format, you can definitely do that as well. Whoops, sorry. So I limited it to 100, so it's just 100 records. And this is just a table that I have in my own Postgres. So I think I'll take some questions because I think it was probably a little bit difficult to go through. I'm hoping it wasn't super difficult, but for you guys, but if you have questions of like how to set stuff up, if you still need the different slides and stuff like that, I'm happy to help go through those. This is my first time doing one of these, so bear with me. I'm still new at it, but I hope you were able to learn something new or something that can help you with maybe more practicing or anything that's for your careers or whatever you're trying to get out of it. So so it's kind of it's a short overview of different things, and if you have more questions, feel free to. I'm happy to take questions for you guys to ask questions at this point. So.
All right, it looks like there's a few questions in the Q&A tab.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to go through. Okay. Q&A tab.
Right next to the share screen.
Okay.
Button.
Let's see. So let's go through this time. So Don, just FYI, the quotes on your original query should be single quotes. When you post from the PowerPoint, it makes the quotes different. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, there probably was an issue. Thank you, Don. Michael, I'm an aspiring data scientist, analyst. How much SQL do you think I'd need to know? That's a really great question. I think the more you know, obviously, the better off you'll be. But at the bare minimum, I would, be comfortable with finding data. So that means like knowing how to use those basic clauses that are kind of presented within the presentation, the where, the select, the from, having, some of those other ones. There's many, many more if you really want to get into the really dive deep into SQL and getting comfortable with joining tables. When you're working in the sort of the industry, there are certain people that'll be on a team that are just really good at it. They can combine all sorts of stuff and partition, do all these crazy things. But you need to know how to understand the data and use it so you don't have to solely rely on every single person that's pulling the data from the databases. So it makes you a little bit more, a stronger, asset to the team. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. But I would definitely, SQL is a strong tool. I don't think it's going away. So I would definitely spend some time to learn those skills. Vince, would it be possible to get a login information for the server? Yeah, so the login information for the server would be on the slides, and if if you don't have that information, I can send it to you. But on the slides there was I think it was, let's see, I can pull it up on my sheet here. Oops, I'm gonna close this. hopefully. So slide 12, if you have this. So it looks like connecting to a database. So here, what you're going to do is, you know, we would go back up to, or we would go to our PG admin, right click on server, and then you're going to go to server and click on this one. You can name it anything you want. So this part, it doesn't really matter what the name is, but for this part where it says host and these different aspects here, that's where that information from this page, slide 12, will come from. So the host name, all this different information, you have to add it into this part, and then you can connect to the server. So that's kind of the way to connect it. And there's a lot of different really cool stuff on that database that you can connect to. So hopefully that will help. Let's see. Emiliano, is it possible or does it even make sense to import MySQL database into Postgres tool? Yes, you can. I think more, haven't done that myself, but Postgres, I believe there's a way you can download a full database as long as it's saved. It could be in a different format, such as you know, an SQL or MySQL. I'm not sure how I haven't used MySQL too much. And you can upload that into Postgres. So to do that, let's see, we can try to see if we can find a way to do this. But so I believe you would I think you would need to go to create a database, and then from here it would give you some information of like how you can add that in there. I think I don't have that information right offhand, but if you still have that question, I'm happy to follow up with you and see if we can find it. So hopefully that will help. That helps you. Thomas, is your company hiring? We were hiring for a while, but obviously due to COVID-19, there's a lot, there's hiring freezes probably across the entire country. And my, a number of people, including myself, were furloughed. And so I'm kind of in a little bit of a limbo for, a couple weeks. So, reaching out and doing these kind of things to help people with learning SQL or, being a resource, I'm happy to do that. But there are resources out there if you look at, just remotejobs.com or LinkedIn or a number of different things to see if, different companies might be hiring. So Frankie, can you talk about creating intermediate tables that only exist for the query, and do they get disposed of? So temporary tables, yeah, so that's a little bit more advanced. And so if you are interested in that, you can, you could look up the CTE tables or temporary tables, and they kind of are, there's nested queries within each other with brackets and stuff. So those, it just it just takes a look, you're running one query that's going to be running off of another query that comes back. So let's see if, so there's, so there's a lot of information on that. I'm just going to post a link into the chat about this. There's a lot of information that you can, access about CTEs. So common table expressions for, temporary tables and things like that. You can find, Brit, is SQL used for big data, and if so, which applications? Yeah, so the SQL is definitely used for big data. There's different types of SQL. So the SQL that we use at Les Schwab is Snowflake, and Snowflake is a SQL that is an enterprise. So it's, companies buy it. There's a fee per month, but it has many, many more options that are available to the particular industry. So big data, definitely you can do a lot with big querying within SQL. Bigger sort of online or cloud databases such as Snowflake or different ones on AWS, a variety of like that. I don't know all of them, but yes, the short answer is yes. Big data heavily relies on SQL. Frankie, having does not need to have a group by. Yeah, I think that is probably true. So if you can write a having without having a group by, but it really depends on what you're trying to get out of your script. And what the question is that might be presented to you. So if you're trying to get, I don't know, if if it's housing or different kind of I don't know, a different kind of question that you're trying to get to, and you need to limit down some variables a little bit more. The having is definitely going to help that, and then you can group by to just aggregate the data down a little bit more. Let's see, Frankie, again, can you talk about indexing choices? Yeah, so I didn't get to those, but so there's a lot of things that you can indexing through sets and other types of ways. I haven't really used those too much with the kinds of things that I've done, but we can, that's a great question. Again, I don't know all the types of stuff with SQL, but and again, so Frankie, have you worked with a columnar DBS or NoSQL DBs of your experience? I have not, and so I'm pretty new into the data science and data world, but I'm quickly trying to pick up things as quick as possible. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm still learning and reading about. NoSQL, I think it has some different advantages to it than, say, Postgres and MySQL do. And off the top of my head, I don't know all the different differences, but those are really good questions. I'm glad you guys asked those, I hope. Let's see. Does anyone else have any other questions? And feel free if you want to continue to ask questions, feel free. I'm going to just attach my email address. If you have additional questions, you can email me. I'm happy to help you guys with, just getting set up, or if you need, if you want a breakout session, tomorrow or something like that, I'm happy to set that up and chat with you more on a one-on-one basis. So.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much, Dane, for your time, and thank you everyone else for attending these talks. The main point is to just hope to inspire people to really further their learning, and that anyone who came to the workshop today really did that. And thank you again, Dane, for sharing some of your experience and knowledge from the industry. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment on what you thought about today's meetup or what you think about our online Zoom format. Also, please make sure to check out our next talk, which is going to be on Wednesday, May 13th, where we will be having Kalyan Krishnamani speak on trends in AI. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Yeah, thank you again, everyone, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, best of luck to everyone. And feel free, if you want to ask questions, yeah, please send me an email. Happy to answer any questions. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one, y'all.
All right. Bye.